This is The Neutral Position, hosted by Nick Palmisano, bringing honesty and reason back into conversation. Here's your host, Nick Palmisano.
Unpleasant or repulsive, especially in appearance. Adjective. The word is ugly. No, we're not trying to describe your mom or that terrible spring break decision you made back in the day. We're talking about the most heinous, eye-bending, gag-inducing dog chew on the planet. We're talking about ugly chews. To you and me, ugly chews are nothing to look at. You see, when you take cowhide, clean it by hand, and sun cure it with no chemicals, it doesn't look like a cute dog bone or rawhide, but it also doesn't sit in your dog's stomach forever or cause digestion issues. So while we see a hairy mess that we don't want to touch in any way, shape, or form, your dog, the natural predator that he or she is, yes, even Mitzi the toy poodle has some wolf DNA in there. That dog just sees gorgeous, delicious, healthy nature. So when you're at the pet store scanning the aisle or you're online ordering the next tasty morsel for your canine companion to gnaw on, are you buying that cute bone or that rubber toy for you or for your dog? Because in your dog's world, that pretty, chemical-filled, tied in an adorable bow treat is a 6 out of 10. Tops. It's fine, it'll do, but it doesn't inspire. Why? Because to your dog, it's not natural at all. It's foreign. It's manufactured. It's a frozen dinner when you really want a perfectly cooked steak. In short, it's just not ugly enough. So if you want to give your dog the experience of a lifetime while Dreamweaver plays and the world moves in glorious slow motion, then get your dog an Ugly Chew at uglychews.com. That's uglychews.com. Hey guys, this is Nick Palmisano on The Neutral Position, and today's guest is Bill Smitrovich, or as he likes to say, Smitrovich, an actor's actor that has done everything from Broadway to television to film and
back alleys.
I mean, whatever it takes is I
nickel
believe
peep shows.
is I believe how he assesses his career. Bill, you've been in everything. I mean, literally, like the way that I describe you to people that don't immediately know who you are is he was the general or the admiral or the police chief in everything.
Yeah.
And you've got a huge project coming up
Yeah.
in the sequel to the.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. For those of people out there that don't really know your background, how did you even start acting?
Well, that's a good question. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Well, let me say that it all started when my dad died. I was 17. Wasn't sure what was going to happen to me, my life. So at that point in my life, I was, we'd moved around a lot as a kid, when I was growing up. And by the time 1964 or 5 arrived, I'd already been in 9 schools from coast to coast. And but along the way, we lived in El Cajon, California for a long time, and I got into bowling. And I was the San Diego County Junior Match Game champion when I was 14 years old. And I loved bowling, and had a 190 average when I was 14. Mm-hmm.
You should know that I regularly bowl just over 100, so I'm not bad either.
Well, you got to stop throwing it between your legs, Nick. You got to go like this. When we moved east, and I was kind of a big shot then because nobody back east, 10-pin bowling had just started, and I was kind of the hot shot, and I got hooked up with some gamblers, some bookies, some people that were denizens of the dark days behind the doors of closed bowling alleys at 2 or 3 in the morning. A buddy of mine and myself just by happenstance, this guy Bill says, "Oh, did you know when you were in California? Did you know Bill Cantoni, who was a real good friend of mine, and a pool player and a bowler?" And he said, "Well, he's a good friend of mine." So this is after my dad died, and we'd hustled our way across country bowling and shooting pool when I was 19, 18, and so that didn't go very well. Oh, we had a good time in Oklahoma, though. There were a couple of twins there that were really nice to us. Anyway, what started that was all started because my dad died, and I was left on my own. But what that means for an actor, it gave me a freedom that I didn't know what I was doing with, didn't know how I was doing it, where I was going with all this freedom.
Yep.
So I got into college. I was working in an office for a while, and I decided, well, I just need to get an education, college education. So I started going part-time. Then I saved enough money to quit my job and go full-time. Well, this is like 2 or 3 years after high school. I'd forgotten how to study. I didn't know what I was doing. So I think I ended up in the first year, I had a 1.2 GPA. So, and they said, well, no, I'm sorry, it's not working out.
Yeah.
So I said, and I went into the bursar's office and said, hey, listen, I put all my money into this. I need another chance. You got to give me another chance,
yeah.
Right? So it was just weird how it happened. Even though I needed to get a 2.8 to get it up to a 2.0, I pledged to fraternity. But little did I know the fraternity had a lot of tests that were going to help me get through and make my grade. So anyway, they got me through. Got my things straightened out, and I started to go to college, full. It took me like 6 years to graduate from college because I had to drop out. I lost money. I didn't have any money, and then I had to go back to work. But the best part of that was I was collecting unemployment and going to school full time. So that was a blessing beyond words.
Yeah.
And during that time, I always, kind of a funny guy, kind of messing around. I went to a lot of different schools, so I was kind of like the funny guy looking for a little attention. And so I got involved in a couple of plays. Somebody said, oh, you do this thing, you're just, and I said, okay. So it was called The Verdict, Peter Weiss play about the Nuremberg trials. So it worked out really well. People liked it, and I went, oh, that's great. Okay, so did another one and, just having fun. And then somebody said to me, hey, you ought to go down and audition for Lenny. And I went, Lenny Bruce? They're doing Lenny Bruce here in the college? I said, great. Yeah, I want to, I can't do Lenny Bruce, but, so I went down there, the theater department, and they handed me a Mice and Men.
I knew this was
right?
coming.
And I said, I'd never read of Mice and Men. I wasn't a big reader. I never read any Steinbeck at that point in my life. I was 20.
Yep.
So I read the play. First time I'd ever wept at a piece of literature in my life.
It's a great book. But were you a little aggravated at your friends for basically pitching you as the simpleton?
I'd forgotten all about it by then. Because I'd never been moved by a story, a play, or I don't even think I'd even seen plays at that point in my life. But I was minoring in special education. So that really, it rang a lot of bells, a lot of lights went on. I just totally understood this character completely. So we had a guest director, and he was a very fine director. He headed up the drama program at a high school in Stamford and graduated a lot of stars. So I go into the audition, and I'm doing the Lenny Curly's wife scene in the barn where he's stroking her hair and he chokes her or breaks her neck. So I'm into it. I am into it. And I'm doing the scene, and all of a sudden, I hear somebody laugh. And I stopped, and I said, how fucking dare you? How dare you laugh? This is a beautiful fucking, I mean, I'm in tears. I'm going, this is a beautiful human being. How can you laugh at this? You're going to direct this play, and you're laughing at this character? You know, I was incensed, right? Because that's what I do.
Yeah.
So he says, they said, no, we're not laughing at you. We're just laughing because we just found our Lenny. So with that, Al Pia, God rest his soul, taught me so much about acting, how a play works, how you take the stage, how you break down a play. And it's, I get control of myself here. But it's where this this particular quote in a book by Michael Chekhov called To the Actor, it starts with a quote. Every chapter starts with a quote. And this one quote was from a art critic in the 1900s in England. He said, all art aspires to the condition of music. Well, I've held that with me forever. And what Al taught me about plays, the word play is because we play. That's what a play is. It's a play. Well, it's broken down into beats, musical. You want to take a pause. It's how long is the pause? I mean, it's all musical. So, for me, that's taken me a long. It's taken me a long way. It's nourished me, that particular quote. The reason why I mention this story is because it's what led to another friend going to Smith College in Northampton, an all-women's, one of the Seven Sister schools. It's a great school. He went there and he said, Bill, you ought to come here and audition for the master's program. And I said, I don't have the grades for that or whatever. And he said, no, you just got to audition, and they want men in their program. So I went down and auditioned, and I did Lenny, and I did a Shakespeare thing, and I did some other thing, and I got a full ride, scholarship, stipend. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So now I'm learning a lot. I'm learning the craft. I'm learning the history. I'm learning so much, playing roles, and started the theater company with a friend of mine after it was over. We did a lot of Chekhov short stories and made them into plays, and would do them all around town and Northampton. And then I started teaching part-time at University of Massachusetts, and I would do the same thing with my students, take short plays, short stories.
I didn't know you taught at UMass.
Yeah, just for
a little while?
A little while. In the Southwest. I wasn't in the theater.
That's where my brother went to school.
Yeah. Well, I was in Southwest, which is where they put a lot of the people from Massachusetts. But anyway,
you can call them massholes. It's okay.
Massholes. Well, I had some really great. In fact, while I was there, Theater X from Milwaukee came in to do a demonstration, and the guy that was a part of Theater X then was Willem Dafoe.
Wow.
And Willem Dafoe came in, and he and his partner did this thing, and with a piece of blue silk, or just like this, and they had a whole play just revolved around that water.
Huh.
And it was great. It was really great. So anyway, my friends and I, we took our play. We started our own theater company called the No Theater Company, N-O, not like Japanese, but we had no theater. So, but my friend Roy, who started the company, there was a small movie theater in town on Pleasant Street in Northampton. Probably almost 100 years old now. But it was the only show in town. It was the only movie theater in town, but then and before. And now maybe, I don't know.
Probably still now.
But it's, so Roy found that there was a basement to this theater. And the theater owner said, if we clean it out, we can use it. Because there's a theater down there. There's a stage down there.
Yep.
Well, what we found out after we cleaned everything out was, there were benches, dirt floor, 2-seat benches, about 12 of them on each side, and a stage. And a projection booth in the back. Well, what it was for Blue movies.
Huh.
People would go there to see Blue movies down in the basement of the movie theater.
Yep.
Well, we cleaned it up and we did our production of The Elephant Man. But this is before Bernard Pomerantz wrote the play The Elephant Man. We took it from the pulp novel, The Elephant Man, and created a play where everybody in the cast played the Elephant Man at one point or another.
So you adapted it yourself.
We did. And then,
Wow.
we brought it into New York.
That's really interesting.
And that's when I said, I'll give it 10 years, go to New York, give it 10 years. Anything happens to me in 10 years, I'm coming back to Northampton, I'll be a bartender. I don't care, I'll teach you, whatever.
That's pretty bold, though. I mean, even saying 10 years, that is a long look on an endeavor. I mean, most people don't do that. They say, I'll give this a couple. I'll give this a couple. No, but I mean, most people don't do that. They say,
true.
I'll give this a couple years if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Well, again, this gets back to what I was going to say, what I was saying before about being free. From when you're an actor, you can't be thinking about what are my parents going to think.
Yeah.
No. If you're an actor, you have to, embrace it all without any equivocation.
Yep.
So me not having that parental thing, it frees you up, and as a performer, it frees up your ability to just come up with whatever is going to work, without thinking about repercussions or judgments, things like this. So
I think that's true of everything.
Yeah.
I really think it's true of, one of the things that whenever people are talking about, especially young people are talking about, I need to do this because my parents want me to do this, or I need to do, it's like, as soon as you let go of the idea that other people are invested in what you're trying to do, because it's not really true, right? Even your parents, I know my parents care about what I do, but at the end of the day, it's my life.
They're worried.
They're worried.
They're worried.
But it's not like, if you don't do the things that you want to do, you're never going to be happy. You're always going to be thinking, what if I had done this? I could have been an athlete. I could have been an actor. I could have been a director. I could have been whatever. So it's, obviously, it's great. It's just great to hear somebody from a different world come to that conclusion. It's interesting. So.
Well, I saw, as I was teaching, I saw a lot of young people kind of bound up by that. Not themselves yet. They're not fully themselves.
In their performance, or just
in
what
their
they were
life?
doing?
In their life. Your life is your performance. I mean, you have to, I'm not as skilled as other actors, some other actors that I know that can be, that can take on, I don't know, parts of, like a Daniel Day-Lewis.
I thought you were going to say The Rock. No, he's amazing.
I got a couple of rock stories for you.
Daniel Day-Lewis is amazing.
Yeah, I don't have that facility. So I'm sure he has life experiences that he draws on, but there's a certain intellectual approach to his work that I don't that I don't do. I come basically from, it's an intellectual approach, but it's more of like what's happening in this, where I am right now. Who am I representing? Why do I want to do this? And where am I going? What do I want?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. So anyway.
I do find it interesting, though, because, you and I have spoken a few times, and you're a deep thinker. You're a very nuanced person. You know a lot. You typically get cast as these unflinching, hard-edged, there's only one way and it's my way characters. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think I owe that to my father. Yeah, my dad. I have great admiration for my dad. He was in the 101st Airborne, 82nd Glider Infantry.
He was glider infantry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and he instilled in me his love of country, his camaraderie, his bravery, and his humility. Mm-hmm. These are kinds of the things that I think of when I get upset with this country. Mm. It's because my father fought, and a lot of other fathers fought, the war to end all wars.
Yep.
I really thought that was true.
Mm.
And he didn't fight for what we're into now.
Sure.
He didn't fight for this. He fought for everybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were black men. He was surrounded by every sort of human being that was American that you could imagine.
Yep.
And now we want to separate this country for what? We're separating this country for the benefit of a few. And it makes me sick. But I'm not going to get into that right now. But I know that what my dad fought for is not what we're living today.
Sure.
And it's upsetting. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we did the play in New York.
Yep.
And my family came to see it, God bless them. Not too many other people. But as I said, I gave it 10 years. And I got a job as a waiter, bartender, trying to get, a survival job. And then I joined an acting class, Jack Garfine at the Director's Lab on 42nd Street, Harold Corman's Theater. So Jack knew Arthur Miller.
Yep.
Was producing his new play. And Jack got me an interview with Arthur.
Wow.
And I auditioned for the lead in this new play. I'm just in New York, like less than 2 years.
Yep.
And it was grand. And they liked me. Dan Sullivan, who I've worked with many times since then, who was a great Tony Award-winning director, Broadway director. He ran the Seattle Rep for a long time. He was directing it. So they didn't hire me for the lead. They hired me to be understudy and assistant stage manager.
Yeah.
Well, I understudied 8 male actors who played a total of 14 different roles.
Wow.
Now,
so you knew that whole
and the lead.
You knew every line and
like every vein in the back of my hand.
Yep.
Well, I was so happy to be there, right? Well, wouldn't you know it, Peter Evans went on opening night, world premiere, with 100 and something temperature. He was probably one of the first victims of AIDS.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know it. No one knew it.
Yep.
He was really sick.
Yeah.
So he couldn't go on for the second, third, and fourth performances. I did.
Yeah.
And we got standing ovations. A lot happened, good things. I thank, God rest his soul, John Randolph, who played my father, who was so kind and supportive. J.T. Walsh was in that production. God rest his soul. And we went on, and when I got back to, and then my restaurant where I worked at called me and said, listen, we can't keep letting you go and do these plays and come back and work, and so we're going to have to let you go. I said, no, you don't have to let me go. I quit. Because at that point, I had just gotten a full-page article in the local paper and everything. And things were starting to happen. Well, certainly, when I got back to New York, word spread. I don't know how, but it does spread. And I started booking things. And I started making some money, finally. Did a lot of commercials and did a lot of theater. But I wouldn't do TV, you know. So
You didn't want to?
No. A lot of us at that time, we're going to do theater and we're going to do film. We're not going to do TV.
Theater was serious acting,
right?
And TV was silly.
Yeah, then film, was there's a lot of money. So I'm doing a play at the Long Wharf Theater in New Haven called Requiem for a Heavyweight, and it was a pretty special production. It was Rod Serling's family had given us the rights to do it.
Wow.
John Lithgow was Mountain McClintock.
Wow.
Richard Dreyfuss was Maish. David Provell, a good friend of mine, was Army.
Is this pre or post Jaws, Richard Dreyfuss?
It's post.
Okay, all right.
And this is post him getting straight, him kicking a lot of habits.
Gotcha.
And coming back into the theater world again. Well, we broke records. We had a great time. And at that time I'd already done a play at the Actors Theater of Louisville in Kentucky called Food from Trash. I was playing a garbage man named Sudden Pisanger. Sudden. That was a great production. We were hoping to do it in Central Park. You know, it was about a garbage man who was transformed by a American Indian, in his town, and we're all living in trailer. And we did it. This is incredible. We did it in a warehouse for invited guests only. I guess we seated about 700 people for every show.
Wow.
We had
garbage truck. You had to be invited.
Yeah. It was mostly press. Garbage trucks.
Yep.
We had a garbage truck. We had cars. We had trailers. We had a 25-foot high storage tank that spewed green shit out of the top of it. And it was about the environment. It's called Food from Trash. And learning how people could be transformed. Well, the name of the Indian was Running Joke. That was his name.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. It was a beautiful play. It was very funny, but it was poignant.
Yeah.
So what Running Joke did, he threw me in the back of a garbage truck, and it was a sort of Zen moment that he throws me in there, and while I'm in there, in the actual thing, there are 3 people from the wardrobe department who are frantically changing me
inside the
truck. And then a few minutes later, it spits me out, and I'm a new man. I'm dazed, but things have changed.
Yep.
So I thought, geez, we're gonna go to New York with this, man. We're gonna be in Central Park. This is gonna be. So it didn't work out. So, but John Jory,
kind of a trashy situation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't.
John Jory.
The dad jokes they're always available.
He was a wonderful director. He was artistic director of Actors Theater Louisville, and at that point, very prestigious thing. A lot of names went there to work. And we have a drink, and he says, well, what do you want to do? I said, what do I want to do? He said, no, what play do you want to do? I said, well, I always wanted to do Chekhov, more of it. And he says, I said, you know what? I'd like to do Mice and Men. I'd like to do it now that I know a little bit more. So we left it at that. About 2 or 3 weeks later, while I was doing this Requiem for Heavyweight, they had moved it to Broadway. They wanted me to do the Broadway show. I get a phone call. This is John Jory's assistant. He says, John wants to know if you want to go to Hong Kong and do a Mice and Men.
Huh.
Hong Kong International Arts Festival.
Yeah.
It was fabulous. It changed my life. We went there, traveled to Japan, met folks, friends in Japan. It was, in my 30s, and here I am, And it was before Britain had given it back to, so it was, Hong Kong was great. It was just great. And Japan was incredible, and I learned so much, went to a lot of theater, but I missed my opportunity to go to Broadway with this play, which didn't kill me, because I was just another boxer, a punchy kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so anyway, when I came back, that's when I read a play, a teleplay called Gold Coast, which was incredibly good, and a television screenplay that I went, wow, this is the best thing I've ever, and it was Miami Vice. So
It's an all-time show.
Yeah.
I am a passionate lover of Miami Vice, passionate.
Right.
And people that didn't grow up in that era look at it as it's all neon, but that was a dark show.
Oh yeah.
That did not
informed. That was an informed show.
It was an informed show. It went places that TV had never gone, and for that matter, probably most film hadn't gone yet.
Right.
The idea that the protagonists were not perfect human beings.
No.
I mean, they were very flawed.
Right.
And they were tempted by all the same things that the villains were tempted by: drugs and sex and money, and but they were staying above the fray, sometimes barely.
Right.
It was an interesting. I'm a huge Michael Mann guy as well, so just full disclosure. And you went on to do,
some on the bottom of my shoe too.
One of his first big films in Manhunter.
Yeah.
That's a huge film, and it's kind of been eclipsed now for modern people by Silence of the Lambs. But I mean,
I'm sorry, but
it's a shot-for-shot remake.
But Brian Cox was the scariest motherfucker I'd ever seen on the film.
Scary.
So much scarier than Anthony Hopkins in that role. And he didn't have any of the shit on his face.
Yeah.
He just was scary.
Yep.
And I've always admired Brian Cox for that role. He's quite wonderful. And Tom Noonan, who played Dollarhide, that was wacky.
What was it like working with Michael Mann?
Well, I was, let's put it this way. When I first met him, Bonnie Timmerman was his casting director, and she had found a lot of people for him in New York. And I remember it was just me and Bonnie and Michael, and we're talking, and I think what Michael got from me was that I was my own man, and that I'd lost my dad. We talked about that. We talked about, how I'm sort of like self-made kind of thing, and he appreciated that.
Yeah.
And that, I'd been a bouncer, I'd been a tough guy, I'd been this, I'd been that. I'm not a tough guy, believe me. I can be, I guess, I don't know. But anyway, we talked for a long time, and Bonnie wanted, I think she had become a fan, and when I'm trying to think of when I did Miami Vice, and then I came back and I did another character on Miami Vice with Charles Dutton, who Michael gave his first role to. Charles was just gotten out of prison. So Michael had an eye for guys that looked like guys. For guys that he wanted to be, that he wanted to populate his world.
Yep.
You look at his films, like Heat.
Yep.
Guys, they're guys, you know?
Yeah. They're not a lot of, I hate to say it like this, because, I mean, obviously Val Kilmer was in that, so that breaks the rule a little bit. But not a lot of pretty boys.
No.
Like believable men.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Is a constant.
Yeah, look at Dennis Farina, right?
Yeah.
Made him and Dennis, God bless him, he was very humble and appreciative throughout all that too, because Dennis started in Miami Vice as well. He played this character named Crawford, right, or something. But anyway, let's see. We're doing Manhunter, and we're doing take after take after take after take. He's known for that.
Yep.
And it was Bill Peterson, Farina, and myself, and we're doing the scene where I find that the piece of toilet paper with his teeth mark on it, and I'm in the thing, and I say, "You're so sly, but so am I." And we must have done maybe 20 takes. And during one of the breaks, he pulls me over and he says, "You want to do a TV show?" I said, "Yeah, I don't know, TV," because it was still theater, film.
Yeah.
So I said, "I don't know." He said, "Yeah, it's about Chicago cops." I said, "I'm in." And that was Crime Story.
Yeah.
So that was another Michael Mann notch in my belt. But what it did for me is I had my first child in Vegas. That's where my son was born, where we're doing that. And so it's all Michael Mann and I are sort of, folded into each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Artistically, and my family, the beginning of my family, the beginning of my career, what I learned, what I didn't learn, what I didn't want to learn.
Yep.
So after that was over, Crime Story, I went back to New York and went back to the theater and was doing a very successful run of Frankie and Johnny and the Claire de Lune with my friend Caroline Aaron and I. It was beautiful. We did a beautiful job with that play. And then I got an offer to do Life Goes On.
So it's interesting to me that, you do these successful Michael Mann projects.
No, he won't even take my call.
And then...
That's a fact.
Really?
Yeah.
Was there like a falling out? Or
I have no idea.
You just...
I did a movie with Will Smith, 7 pounds. I badgered Will to give money to the Screen Actors Guild Foundation. I said, "Will, you're making money. I wrote him emails and everything. Yeah. And I don't know whether, and I didn't have a good time on that particular shoot because I couldn't understand this French director. Just couldn't forget it. He was
couldn't understand the words.
No.
Yeah.
And he was shooting on a long lens, and he's not around. I'm getting the second-hand direction on a walkie-talkie, and I was totally confused. I had a horrible time. In fact, I put the whistle, I'm playing a coach, I put the whistle in my mouth the wrong way. That's how screwed up I was. I'm going, oh, fucking, and Will Smith got a big fucking kick out of it, but it pissed me off that he would laugh at another performer's pain and discomfort when he knew I was in trouble. And it pissed me off. So, that might have been it. But I'm not sure why he won't. But, you know, one day I was sitting at home, I said, you know, I got to call Michael and thank him. Well, the motherfucker wouldn't take my call. And I don't know why. But it is what it is. He is who he is. And a lot of directors in Hollywood, they don't, you know, once the circus is over, and that's that. But I'd done so many things with him.
Yeah.
And it helped him in so many ways. And he helped me, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I don't know why
Yeah.
he thinks he can blow me off like that. I'm not troubled by it. I'm just telling you that that's just the way it is right now.
But I have very, very limited Hollywood experience. But I do know that doing a movie takes it out of you.
Yeah.
Like it takes at the end, you are exhausted. And so, you know, when we did the movie Range 15, which is like I always describe it as a terrible film that has a cult following. But
there's a lot of those.
When we did that movie, you know, all of the six kind of principal guys in it we were all very close, and we're still close. But we kind of almost had to take like a year off from each other after finishing, because we wrote it together, we raised the money, produced it, acted in it.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, we really did kind of like have to take a year off from each other, because you are just, it's not even that you don't like the people, but you're so sick of everybody's shit. You know, and that goes. I'm sure they were sick of my shit. I was sick of their shit, and it people don't understand what goes into it.
Well, making a movie is no pressure, and all of a sudden a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure, a lot of pressure.
Yep.
No pressure, a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Money, no money.
Yeah.
You know, why can't we do this way? You know, I mean, it's just making movies. It's hard. It's hard. It is really hard, and I don't know how. You know, people say, you know, what's it like to make a movie? Well, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting,
and
they think of it as
I'm not
fun.
directing it.
They think of it as fun.
Yeah.
People watching are like, that must have been a blast, and it is fun, in moments. In
Right.
moments, it's the best thing
yeah.
ever.
It's the best industry in the world.
But
I mean,
but in
I
other
think.
moments, it's truly terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I've learned from doing the one film, you know, the one narrative film that I've done, is acting is very hard. Like, I played myself in the movie, and I was terrible at it. So I have a lot of appreciation for acting as a result of doing that. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer to be on stage, or do you prefer to be, you know, filming?
Well, if I could support my family doing theater for the rest of my life, that's what I would do.
Is it because it's more exciting? You're in the moment?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I don't think I could do a run of a year of a play. I don't think I could do that anymore. In fact, I can't. I mean, I'm just too old to do that. But when I was younger, you know, somebody offered, you know, I could do a run of a play for a year. But
do you have trouble finding?
I have trouble remembering lines now. And like, remembering lines is a very difficult thing. It's not that it's like on this past project, there were times, you know, I felt like, well, I'm just going to go in there and nail this motherfucker now, you know, I got it.
Yep.
Well, something happens. All you need is one thing to happen. You got to start all over again. And you know there's 130 extras looking at you.
Yep.
And you keep doing it. But as I told Todd, I said, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a take one kind of guy.
Yep.
And it was difficult. But as I said to him, I said, the pandemic killed me. Financially, emotionally, it was hard. And I hadn't been on stage in a couple of years. So all of a sudden, all that shit hit me.
Comes back.
And I thought I was fine until, once you haven't been on the bike for a while,
Yep.
hey, you're going to fall off.
Yep.
So, but falling off was not part of my plan.
Yeah.
And you start putting a lot of pressure on yourself. And, you get through it. But they're just little things like, you'll make a change. It was funny, we'll make a change and we'll make the scene better. But, we'll say, well, let's try it this way. This is,
Sure.
And then you go, okay, let's do it that way. But we talked about 3 different ways of doing it, and now we get to do it, and I'm 75, and I'm going, and I do it, but I'm wrong.
Yep.
I do a different version
thing. Yeah.
that we talked about not doing.
Yeah.
So you lose total control somewhere here when you want to just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
When you want to be so involved with it that you don't even think. And that's performing. Performing is not thinking.
Yep.
Performing is doing. When I teach acting, I use a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And the book breaks down our performance ourselves into self 1 and self 2. It's almost like 2 different sides of your brain. Self 1 is the analytical side. I'm going to do it this way,
Yep.
when you're learning to throw a baseball,
Yeah.
you say, okay, I gotta bring that baseball back behind my ear, I gotta turn my shoulders, and I'm gonna just let it all go.
Yep.
Now, after you learn how to do that, you're not thinking about it.
That's right.
You're picking up the ball and you're throwing it.
That's right.
That's performance.
Yeah. Yep.
So the A and the B of this, the self 1 and the self 2, is getting to a point where you don't have to think.
Yep.
Where you're being, you're doing, you're ready for any other thing that happens.
How do you get there?
Well, you get there by working, by studying. As someone once said, if you're confused about what's happening, it's on the page. It's all there.
But
that's the only place it really lives.
But that's
until you make it live.
That's an interesting thing, though. So I teach something when I coach kids in wrestling. I teach something very similar. Like essentially you've got to drill until you're not thinking about what the move is. Because if you're thinking, the other guy's already ahead.
Exactly.
But in acting, I've actually heard 2 schools of thought. If you do too much, if you practice too much,
you lose the spontaneity.
It becomes wooden.
Well, it can.
So how do you balance that?
Well, sometimes you just have to remember. Well, it's like performance and analytics.
Mm-hmm.
You have to forget the analytics. Go back to the performance. Mm-hmm. That's it. Just throw all that other shit away.
How do you do that, though? Because
you remember what it was like when you first read it.
Uh-huh.
And you go back to that over and over again. How did I want to do this when I first read this? How was I going to do this? Now, let's do it. Now that if I've done it 7, I've got it down. Who am I doing it wooden for? I'm not doing it wooden for anybody.
Yeah.
I'm doing it wooden so I could learn it. And then when I learn it, the wood goes away, all the crutches and the thing, and we fly. Mm-hmm. So you have to get to the point, you always have to remember what you want to do. What is it you're trying to do when you started the thing? because most of your good instincts come the first time you read a script,
Interesting.
right?
Interesting.
Would you agree with that?
I don't know.
When
I
you
don't know.
read something,
Yeah. You have a feeling for what it is.
you have that feeling.
Yeah.
Or you imagine it.
Yep. That's right.
You can see it.
That's right. Yeah.
And what you're seeing is your vision. And your vision is what you hold on to. This is what I want. This is what, until the director comes and said, you know, I got another idea about this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just say, okay, well, I can slide that into there. But if you can't, you say, I don't know. You got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, I've directed for stage and for, I directed A Life Goes On. That was the highest rated show in 4 years.
It was a great show.
And not my particular episode. It was
Oh,
the highest one.
your episode.
And it was when
Which one was it?
Becca breaks up with Tommy, and it was his last show, and the motherfucking cowards of producers and directors of that show didn't want to tell him it was his last show. Can you believe that?
Wow.
So I called him. I said, listen, Tommy,
Back is
they don't want to
dumping
tell you,
You're getting
but
dumped.
I'm telling you,
Yep.
this is going to be your last show. Now, you can get angry, or you can get with it. Let's get with it. Let's show them they're making a big fucking mistake. Just between me and you.
And the thousands of people listening.
No, I mean with Tommy.
I know.
Nobody told him that.
That
And
doesn't-
years later.
That doesn't surprise me at all, though.
Right. Years later, he thanked me profusely for letting him in on that, you know, because it's not right.
Yeah.
And I didn't take to it. But anyway, that Life Goes On. As much as I love the show, it was the most gratifying job I've ever had in my life. It was not without incredible pain from certain people in the cast who did nothing but try to make my fucking life miserable. And all because
Do you want to tell them
I
a
was
little?
the number one on the call sheet, and
Yep.
she wasn't. Anyway,
But we're not going to.
We're not gonna mention any names.
and a lot of other things.
But you know, maybe for a lot of our listeners and people watching this show are a little younger than I am. So Life Goes On probably isn't a show that they even
Right.
know.
Right.
So, you know, talk about the show because it was groundbreaking.
Well, you know, I see Harrelson is doing a movie now with a lot of Down syndrome kids.
Yep.
I've forgotten the name. Was it a TV series or a movie?
I think it's a movie.
I think it's a movie.
Is it a movie?
I think it's a movie.
Well, I'll tell everybody out there that who loves that or sees that movie with him, just know that 30 years ago or 35 years ago, there was a television show that was groundbreaking by having an actor having a family with a Down syndrome child trying to mainstream into a high school, and about the family and the dynamic of the family having that extra chromosome in their life. I wish everybody had an extra chromosome like that, because all it is love. And it was the best part of that was getting fan mail from the siblings of those young children who were brothers and sisters. Who would write letters telling us that they never knew their brother and sister could do this, that we had actually educated them to the point of bringing them awareness of their life. And that's what theater does. It brings people together, and it makes us aware of each other and who we are, what we're capable of, whether it be good or bad. And I think that's what the arts do, and I think for sure that's what theater does. Life Goes On was enjoyed by people of color because they were disenfranchised as well. So that's what, art does that. It takes disenfranchised people and gives them a voice, gives them purpose, and makes us aware. And I'd like, wish there were more shows like that. I'm glad that Harrelson is making this movie. It's about inclusion rather than exclusion. It's about understanding. And there's so much more of that available to us than the animosity and the vitriol that we have for people who are just trying to get by.
Yeah,
with their lives.
I think your premise is essentially appreciate contribution.
Yeah.
Everybody contributes differently.
Yeah.
We don't all have to have the same skills. We don't all have to do the same things. I think there's we talk about this a lot, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but I think most of the anger that people allegedly have for each other is manufactured. I don't think, I really, and maybe I'm an optimist, but in my day-to-day life, I encounter very little hate. Like, I don't run into people that are like, Nick, you think this, you're a jerk. Nick, you think that, you're a jerk. Nor do I provide that kind of feedback to people that have differing opinions to me. On the internet, however, you can agree with somebody.
Bodiless.
95%. You and I can agree on 95% of things, but if we disagree on one thing on the internet, you might be, not you personally, but you might be like, Nick, you are the worst. You are not human. How can you think this?
Right.
How can you possibly,
right.
And I do think that, avatars removing who you really are. I think the performative nature of wanting likes and reactions and all of that brings a negative result.
I agree.
And I think one of the things that I have ignored over the years, and at times, like at the height of my apparel company, there was a lot of pressure to think and act a certain way, and I had to choose not to and just kind of call it like I saw.
What was that certain way?
There is a very loud contingent of veterans that are extremely right. And I am I describe myself as a Massachusetts Republican, which essentially means no one likes me. I'm not left enough for you guys, the West Coast, and I am not right enough for the GOP. I voted for people from every party.
Me too.
I really do kind of assess the situation and vote accordingly. And so there is a contingent where if you open up the door to discuss something, which is my nature, there are problems. Let's talk about it and solve the problem. Let's put everything on the table for discussion. That doesn't mean that I agree with it, but let's talk about it because that's the only way we're gonna come up with something that works. When I do that, there are people that immediately come in and say, like, you're a bad person, you know? And I think that's true for everybody, regardless of what their niche is. I think that if you are far left and you come out and say, hey, you know what, on this one thing, I think that whoever, Dan Crenshaw, you know, like whoever is right, you get hammered. You can't have reason to discussion. So one of the things that I decided a long time ago, and this is my dad probably has a lot to do with this. I just made a decision that I'm never going to bed regretting what I did. Like, I don't want to regret, like, I don't want to sell out and go to bed saying, well, yeah, I just got, you know, 10,000 more followers, but I don't really believe what I just said. And so I just made the decision, like, hey, I'm going to call it like I see it. Sometimes I'm going to be wrong. Sometimes I'm going to be right. The internet's going to give me feedback. And whether that's good or bad, I'm just going to let it fly.
Let me ask you, you know, we say far left and we say right, and what is far left?
I think far left is, to me, is...
And what is right?
Yeah. So I can tell you what I think they mean, and I can tell you...
Let me just, you know, before you say that,
Yeah.
I want to hear your answer.
Yeah.
But I think that people get, well, anyway, let me hear your answer. I really want to, you know, I think we get caught up in labeling things.
I agree with you.
And
I agree with
this
you.
labeling, we're so much more complex.
Absolutely.
Everybody, the right side, the left side, the center side,
Yeah,
whatever.
there aren't
but there has to be one common thing that we can all agree on.
Well,
What is that? What is one common thing we can agree on? Left, right, center,
Sure.
whatever you've heard.
Yeah.
What can we agree on? One thing?
Pursuit of happiness, maybe?
No. Well, that's in
Yeah.
the Constitution, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot, but I'd like to hear. I think you have something in mind.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm just saying that. Is there a possibility we can rally around one thing that we can all agree on?
Yeah, alien invasion.
You see what I mean?
I'm in.
I don't think there is.
Imagine a media agency that can make a documentary that qualifies for Academy Award voting. Imagine another that created a Billboard charting music video for Five for Fighting. Imagine another that has raised so much money for nonprofits in its first year working on the Classy.org platform that at the end of the year, it was named as only the second marketing partner in Classy's history. Imagine another firm that can cover your events anywhere on planet Earth and provide a compelling series of videos about those events immediately and to your needs. And imagine another still that can help your e-commerce business take it to the next level. Now imagine that they're all the same business, Diesel Jack Media. Some of you might be saying, hey, Nick, isn't that your company? And to that I answer, can a company like Diesel Jack Media really be owned? Or can it merely be coaxed out like a beautiful butterfly on a spring day? As you listen to this podcast that, by the way, Diesel Jack Media created, you may be asking yourself, what's our secret? It's simple. We try not to suck. Sounds easy, right? It should be, but somehow marketing companies and media agencies always seem to get it wrong. You see, we don't make PowerPoints about doing work. We do the work because we like the work. And if one of our ideas doesn't work, you know what we do? We try another one again and again and again until our ideas start to work. Because not quitting until it's right is at the heart of not sucking. And as previously mentioned, that's what we try not to do here. Diesel Jack Media. We try not to suck. Visit us at dieseljackmedia.com. That is dieseljackmedia.com. Hey guys, we took a little break because this has been a long episode. And while we were on break, we started talking a little bit about the government influence on business and specifically on banking. So here we go. Before the fiscal crisis that we had kind of the 2009 timeframe. It was extremely easy for me as an entrepreneur to go into a bank and pitch my case. So it wasn't just...
Well, they were giving away money then, too.
It wasn't, it wasn't just, what are the books currently? It was, I went in there with a presentation. I went in there with all the data I had, but also they were able to look at me and say, okay, you have good credit as an individual. You went to Duke Business School. You've done certain things that we believe you're going to be successful.
Right.
So the very first
Got
loan,
some cred.
the first loan that I asked for, when I was starting this tiny apparel company, my first company, Ranger Up, I needed $50,000, a tiny sum in terms of the bank world.
Yeah.
They gave me $100,000. That
Right.
was pre-crisis.
Right.
Post-crisis, I had at this point paid off, multiple loans, had perfect business credit, had no issues. We were gearing up for the holiday season, and we needed a couple $100,000, maybe 300. I don't know what it was. Some amount of money that was not that significant compared to our revenues, and we just wanted a short-term bank loan. And I did 300 pages of memorandum, and they still only gave us a fraction of it, to the point where we didn't even take it. And that makes it impossible for small business to operate. And now, we're currently going through a crisis right now, largely caused by deregulation, because we have Silicon Valley Bank has failed.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, it has failed, and it failed because in 2018, a huge bipartisan bill passed. I think it was nearly 70%. I know it was a veto-proof majority in the Senate, passed, that reduced the number of reduced the capital ratio for small banks, because they no longer had to think about unrealized gains or losses. So another way of thinking about that is, if they had positions in the stock market that they had purchased, let's say for $1 million, that were now worth only $500,000, they didn't have to realize that loss as their capital ratio. So small banks, and small was defined as under $250 billion in deposits, could ignore unrealized gains or losses. Larger banks had to report them. And that lack of oversight probably is the reason why Silicon Valley Bank just failed.
Yeah. Well, the venture capitalists had a lot to do with that.
They did.
They were giving away money.
Yep.
Without any cred. They were doing investing, giving money to projects that they knew nothing about. All in in that silicone kind of way. In that how should I say it? Technical things that you can't understand, but we're going to do this.
Yeah.
It's all part of our and now they're broke.
Yep.
That's they gave money to people in investments without even thinking about what they were doing. Isn't that part of the problem?
Well, but then they lose their money, or they lose money that they're on the hook for.
Well, all the investors, all the people that have their money in the bank lose their money.
That's right. And so, the thing that kicked off the thing that kicked off the whole banking issue is the bank ran out of funds.
Right.
So they had to sell bonds at a loss.
Right.
So suddenly, because the interest rates have raised, they sell those bonds. The bank had to then realize $1.8 billion in losses. That raised a red flag with the venture capitalists. They told their businesses, "Hey, we recommend you pull out."
Yeah.
So in one day,
what was that guy's name that starts with an F? Oh, Thiel.
Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel.
In one day, $42 billion gets removed from a bank with deposits of, I think, 197 billion. They run out of cash. Their stock drops 60% in a day. They get frozen. The government comes in and says, you can't recover from this. We're seizing all your assets.
Right.
And that's
a lot of lives.
A lot of lives. Yeah, a lot of lives. And so this is where, it's this yin and yang, right? I do not think the government should be involved hardcore in everything, because the government creates problems just in the same way that even when it's trying to do the right thing. We've talked recently about, student loans, for example.
Right.
The government came in and said, hey, we want all people to be able to go to college. We're going to back student loans. Well, the artificial backing of these student loans has resulted in schools abusing that,
Right.
significantly increasing prices.
Yeah.
Now we have a huge problem. They did the same thing with housing. Everybody should be able to buy a home. We're going to provide these loans that are essentially free money,
Right.
until all of a sudden people can't make those payments because it's a balloon payment or whatever.
Right.
So government
All
involvement.
predicated on a dream, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is.
And so when does, if the government wants to be involved,
Mm-hmm.
and the government should be involved, I think, or capitalism should be involved in a way to enrich people's lives
I do agree.
and
yeah.
learn. Tell them it's not about going to college. It's
Yep.
not about buying a house.
Yep.
It's not about having 2 kids. It's about enriching your life. How can we help you enrich your life? Because if your life is enriched, it goes on and on and on. It's like a domino.
Yes.
So why can't capitalism provide the same or a part of the support that American people need?
So I think it can.
Why doesn't it?
That's a good question. That's
I
a
mean,
great.
if we're capitalism,
Yep.
then capitalism has a responsibility.
I agree.
And capitalism doesn't want unions. Well, unions are about people. Unions are about people trying to have a life, trying to live a life where they can have 2 kids and have child support and have health care. Capitalism should be providing that. Doesn't have to be government only.
So
There used to be.
So you raise an interesting question.
There used to be, when I was a kid, now this is all used to be, and everybody goes, oh yeah, it all used to be like that. Well, where companies cared about their employees, where companies had a company picnic, where companies cared about your kids,
Yep.
cared about your family. Now they don't give a shit.
I don't think that's true.
Most of them.
I think that. I think.
Why
that-
don't you think that's true?
Because
you
I-
think is there a no? Let me just.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you name one multinational company
No.
that does anything for
No.
people?
No, I can't.
No, you can't.
I can't name. Well, I shouldn't say that. I thought John Deere was very good. I thought John Deere was a very good company at looking out for people.
For their employees.
For their employees
and their customers.
and their customers. Yeah, I think they're a great
As you
company.
said, they had $380 billion worth of stuff. So what are they doing with all that fucking money?
They invest a lot of it.
Yeah.
Well,
how about investing in people?
They do. I think
Yeah,
they do.
I hope so.
I think they do.
I would like to see other companies do that. John Deere, God bless you. If you're doing your thing.
I think there are companies that do. I think they are few and far between.
Yeah.
I think most of it, for most people, it's lip service. I think it's, hey, we have to do the token X, Y, and Z because otherwise we're going to look bad. And,
Right.
and by the way, we're going to market the crap out of us doing this. But where I was going with that when I said I don't think that's true is I think small business, and I'm going to define small business as maybe, I don't know, up to 100 million or so in
I see what you mean.
revenue.
Sure.
I think small business cares deeply about their employees. You know, I can tell you,
That's a pretty general statement.
of course, yeah, there are people that are absolute trash. But I think for the most part, when you're a small business owner,
Now, how do we regulate that, though? I mean, how do you? We all talk about it, but and we don't want government regulation. Well, somebody's got to answer to somebody. You just can't have people say, "Oh, we did our thing. We put up that lawn over there for everybody, for the kids and everything." Well, that's great. Okay, what else? What Let's have some transparency. Let's. I just feel people forget that there are humans out there that are really struggling.
Yeah, I really agree with you on this premise. Like, I would like to see private industry solve more problems so they don't become public problems. That is like,
Now that's a good GOP stance right there.
I think it is a good GOP stance. I agree. In like our company and kind of my life belief is like, I want to give back, more to my employees, my customers, and my country than I take. That is
legacy.
That is the way that I look at life. And I think there are more and more businesses, especially from this generation, because as much as we crap on, both millennials and the up and coming Generation Z, I don't think that they are as resilient as my generation in some ways, but I think that they are far more compassionate than my generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they do things with compassion in mind. I think the businesses being created by younger people are more compassionate and have a view of, how do I make the world better?
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that this generation cares about more than just shareholder value added.
Gee, I wish I could believe that.
I know.
And I've seen they've had plenty of opportunity to walk the walk.
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I've heard tell that if we got a penny, if the stock market would take a penny from every trade, we could end world hunger. How about that?
I don't think it's true.
No? How about just American hunger? How about just poverty in America?
Sure.
We could do that.
I don't know the math, but I agree with the premise that we could end hunger in America.
Just think of it. A penny. And we got to start doing things like that. We got to start making capitalism work for the people. Because this trickle-down bullshit, it don't happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's proven at this point.
Oh, God, yeah.
Trickle-down doesn't work.
Firing unions doesn't work either.
But you said it at the beginning of the program that you can do anything in this country.
Yeah, if you don't, you can, but you might get killed doing it.
I mean, what I mean by that is there is opportunity.
Who killed Epstein?
I don't know. I wish I knew.
Me too.
I really do.
Damn, I do wish I knew. But anyway, this is great. This is great that you can take what I give you and I can take what you give me, and we can have this back and forth. But I would love to see somebody come up and have a pair of balls to say what's really fucking going on and to give the American worker a chance. I think we can train people.
Yeah.
We have the ability to create jobs.
Yep.
Create training. I think Biden has done this in a large way.
Presidents never create jobs.
Well,
it's always been.
I'm saying that he's created the opportunity for that to happen, more so than past presidents.
I don't know. I honest to God think the pandemic just ended, and there's.
Oh, that was tough. Yeah.
And the world has changed, and people are kind of racing back to.
And I hope that that when we do, when this pandemic's over, in some way, for the majority of us, that there is a reawakening of some magnitude that makes a difference, that creates a different way of looking at life.
Yep.
A different way of looking at hope and love and compassion for each other. Mm-hmm. I just want everybody in this country should be given an opportunity, and usually they were, without fucking somebody else.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to do a job and then do it well. Everybody wants, in America, everybody kind of wants that. They want to learn how to do a job and they want to do it well.
Yeah,
we all want
one of the
right?
things. One of the things my dad used to say, or still says, is
God bless him.
Nobody wakes up in the morning trying to do a bad job.
That's right.
So whenever you see somebody not succeeding, start with the premise that they're the hero of their own story and they're trying to do a good job.
Yeah.
And then, if you start with that, it's easier to approach things reasonably.
Right. Well, I appreciate the show. I appreciate what you guys are doing here in big ways. Send Me blew my mind and made me aware of situations in this world I wouldn't normally be made aware of. Mm-hmm. And I thank you for that. And I thank everybody that was involved in making that film and saving the people that they did save. A great big, goddamn, I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that. And
everybody involved in that. It's this is what we're capable of.
Absolutely.
And you guys presented that in such a beautiful way. And hey, we're so much better together than we are separated and
always
divided.
Always.
And I know everybody's got a different way of living their life, but everybody has to understand that there are other people also trying to live their life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't think that when you get on this fucking social media, people's lives become one sentence.
Yeah.
One word.
Yeah, you distill
one thing.
You distill everyone down to like a thought or an argument.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
Right. Put you in a box, you're an asshole.
It's insane.
All right. No, you're not an asshole. You have feelings.
Yep.
And these are the feelings that you're having right now.
Yeah. And you grew up.
Let's understand them.
You grew up a certain way. You grew up with certain parents. You grew up in a certain environment, in a certain state.
Right.
The number one reason that most people are whatever political party they are is whatever political party their parents were.
Right. All these people these mass murderers.
Yep.
There are so many incidences that I've read about that before the incident happened, they displayed some obviously weird fucking behavior.
Oh, yeah. Almost in every situation.
Right?
Yeah.
What prevents people from saying, I think we got a problem here? Mm-hmm. What prevents people from saying, putting an arm around that fucking person's shoulder and saying, what's going on with you? Did nobody do that? And why?
It's a good question.
This is what the social media has part of it. You can't put your arm around somebody on social media. I have. I've seen people getting beaten up, and I said, wait a minute here. Let's consider who this person is. And things calm down.
Yep.
People get so ramped up, ratcheted up because they're so pissed off and they're so angry about something that they're going to let that go.
Yeah.
And they're going to let it go on you, and they're going to walk away thinking they feel better. You don't feel better.
Making
somebody feel bad.
Yeah, I've never in my life been in a situation where I have teed off on somebody, even if I was right.
Right.
Even if I was right.
Right.
And felt better at the end of it. And I think people that notoriously go after everyone are unhappy. They're unhappy with who they are. They're unhappy with their situation.
Yeah.
And it's just never good for you to just kind of dump negative energy all the time.
Well, you get what you sow.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
Negative gets negative. I mean,
that's right. You attract like-minded people.
I've drank so much water now. I really got. All right, we'll let you go for a minute.
So I've got, we've kind of had this
Oh,
conversation back and forth a little bit about, you're very clearly a hardcore Republican.
You know what? If I could be a Republican. When I was younger,
Yep.
I thought, well, yeah. I want people to learn. I want them to earn their living.
Yep.
And I want, well, it's really easy to say for a white man. But I tell you what, it's not that easy for a black man. And that's part of what the fucking GOP problem is.
So I don't think that I don't think
Sorry
that's
about that.
I don't think that's true anymore. I do think it's
Wait a minute, what's not true?
I don't think it is hard for a black man to earn a living anymore. I don't think that's true.
Let me ask you this.
What
way.
I do think
Okay.
is true
All right.
is it is very hard to go from poverty to middle class. It is much easier to go from middle class to success.
Yeah.
Right? And there is absolutely
Unless there's talent involved.
generational disadvantage from, like you were talking about, in your lifetime, you're talking about a director saying, I don't want any black people on the show. So that is...
No, that was a producer.
I'm sorry.
A Jew
a
producer telling somebody they couldn't put other disenfranchised people. This is, this is power and greed and all
so
kinds
there
of
are,
bullshit.
there are, whenever people are like, I don't, black people have had enough time to kind of,
Yeah.
Bro, we're talking about the 60s. It still wasn't equitable legally. And we're talking about as early as 2000, they found banks that had, clearly racist lending policies. So I'm not saying, I want to be super clear, I'm not saying that there has not been generational racism that has caused a significant problem. That being said, I think that the problem now is less about skin color and more about generational wealth. I think that if you are middle class,
White generational wealth.
just period. If you're
Wait a minute, hold it. Stop. So you think there's black generational wealth? I'm sorry, you lost me at
Yeah.
generational wealth.
If your parents are middle class,
Right.
you got a pretty good shot at life. If your parents are not middle class,
White middle class?
any middle class. That's my point is that the variable now is less about race and it is more about where you're starting. But I agree that there are a lot of people that are not starting in the same place because of literal centuries of racism, slavery, segregation, etc. But I think it's always important to look at what the actual problem is. The problem is that the greatest opportunity that a person has is having a functional family unit that is able to provide both enough so that you're not in crisis, as well as guidance for how to move forward in the future. And, to me, that is the variable that is most important. I think that if you are black or you are white or you're Asian and you're starting at the exact same financial situation, your parents have similar values, I do not think that there is a disadvantage to being black. I think the
I love you, Nick, but I think you're talking in non-specific generalities. I think, you talk of generational wealth and people's beginnings and where they start. The majority of us don't have wealth.
Agreed.
Correct?
Yep.
So not everybody gets the same shot no matter where you are.
And they never will.
Okay. So what is your premise then? If they never will, then what will they do? I mean, what I'm saying is that everybody wants to put everybody in a box. I mean, people want to put, it's easier to say,
it's human nature.
Okay, you are this, and I am this, and you are that.
It's human nature.
Okay. Well, opportunity, if everybody was given an opportunity, then I would go with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But everybody's not given an opportunity.
Yep, and that's never going to happen.
And it's unfortunately not going to happen.
That's right.
But it could. If capitalists would want it to happen. Big multinational corporations have the ability to open training centers all over the country.
That's true. Yep.
Training centers, we'll bring them in here. We'll pay you this until you learn the job. There are many, many ways to create that kind of opportunity when you're not buying back your stock, when you're not worried about the stockholder and where it's going, and you're more worried about the people, not the money. So, yeah, I think capitalism has a responsibility, and government has a responsibility to make capitalism realize that they have a fucking responsibility, or else they're going to get fined. Yeah, I think regulations are really, really good, because without them, we'd be drinking dirty water and sucking in bad air, putting things on our bodies that we have no business putting on our bodies or in our bodies, because somebody wants to make a profit. So let's talk about how we can bring an uplift to a reawakening of getting this next generation a chance to learn a trade, to learn a skill, not have to go to college, but to build our fucking country. Now, after World War II, my dad, well, many of our dads, or dads in this country, worked for the CCC camps, Civil Conservation Corps.
Yep.
Talking about building roads and bridges and repairing and building national parks and things like that.
Yep.
Well, these are all men and women of any color that were given an opportunity. And from that, people learn skills, learn how to be with each other. That's what we need. We need how to learn how to be with each other, rather than dividing ourselves into these separate fucking communities. You can be in your separate community, but you just got to care a little bit.
Sure.
That's all. I mean, it's not all just.
But there's a couple things on that, though, right? So the first thing is, you were. One, people have to be willing to take those jobs. They have to be willing to do that. And when you have a situation, and I want to be really clear, I'm not anti-welfare at all.
Yeah.
My grandfather, on my mom's side, passed shortly after he came back from World War II. She had 6 kids. She worked a full-time job. She was still on welfare because there was no way she was going to make ends meet, without a husband. And she was extremely religious and wasn't going to remarry.
Right. So, that's when the government steps up and should help you.
So I'm not anti-welfare. But when a program is such that it incentivizes people to not work. Or, why am I going to work this?
Who makes the incentive?
Well, it really comes down to, am I going to work for a little bit more money, or am I going to take this?
I know, but who makes the incentive?
What do you mean, who makes the incentive?
Well, who provides the incentive for them to get on welfare? The government.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
The government could also provide the same incentive for them to find a fucking job.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
And okay, well, that's a GOP kind of thing. Well, I think, I don't think, I'm not into welfare. I'm not into the government supporting people, but I am into the government to help me when I need my help, and to protect us from what? Capitalism. To protect us from the dangers. Listen, I lost almost $1 million. Swindled. It killed me.
Yeah, it's crushing.
And I had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Who am I going to turn to?
Yeah.
So it's a thing of building, of starting again. I did a play years ago, written by Thornton Wilder. It's called The Skin of Our Teeth. That play, in World War II, people would give up their food rations to see this play. It was that important. And the main thing it said was starting again, always beginning again, over and over and over, beginning again. The play took you from the Ice Age all the way up to present day. And it showed that this is what we do. We're always faced with doing it again, building it again.
Yep.
And we need to do that now. We need to rebuild this, do that I can. Give people an opportunity to start again, over and over and over.
So
I'm lucky.
So I want to ask you this, because you've come back to this. I can tell that you both hate and love capitalism. Like
Well, I think capitalism works. I mean, it's what the country is built on. But
it's I
they
truly
have
believe
really fucked us.
it is the best system that has been invented thus far, and it rewards the right things, in general terms, right? Hard work.
Capitalism would work without socialism. Capitalism doesn't work without socialism, because capitalism doesn't provide socialism.
I disagree, and I know what you mean by socialism. I'm hoping that you don't mean actual socialism, and that you actually
I mean social programs that help the general population.
A collective solution.
Collective welfare, people's welfare, not welfare as we know it, but the welfare of people's health, life, happiness, that welfare.
And this is always the push-pull, right? So it's, there is Ayn Rand capitalism, which is like we're all in it for ourselves, and
you got Upton Sinclair on the other side.
Nothing else matters. And then socialism, true socialism, doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. There is no incentive to be.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be like everybody else.
Right. And you are a person that has excelled in your career, and through hard work, adversity, you committed to 10 years of your life to succeed, which is something that people wouldn't even fathom for the most part nowadays. So, but I do agree. Like our common ground here is, if private industry doesn't start solving these problems, then you are going to get significant government intervention. And when the government comes in hard, it very rarely gets it right.
Well, then why doesn't the why don't they stop the government from doing that by doing it themselves?
Well, this is where I'm coming from with this. Is I agree that this is the right solution is for private industry to come through.
Mm-hmm.
How would you do that?
I'd let people unionize.
Well, people,
I wouldn't stop them
people,
from unionizing.
People can unionize.
No, Nick.
They can.
Nick. Hello, Nick. Starbucks doing
Bill.
every fucking thing they can to stop the
Well,
union.
They absolutely are, but that doesn't.
And there are many other companies that are stopping unions.
They are trying to, but if everybody at Amazon,
Why were they trying to?
Because it's not in their best interest.
That's right.
You know, and very rarely are union company relationships good.
Okay.
John Deere is an exception to that. They have
apparently.
They have a very healthy. No, I mean, I'm like, hey,
They do.
Again,
There are exceptions.
even though I did not want to stay there, I have a tremendous amount of respect for that company. Their union
They make a hell of a product.
and their management went out of their way to have a very good relationship.
Instead of a union, they went out of their way.
No, I'm saying
to
the union and the management went out of their way to have a good relationship.
Oh, okay.
So typically, what occurs over time is the union management relationship becomes very adversarial, and it's the union is always trying to get more, and the company's always trying to give less, and there's always this this fight.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can only do, if you work more than X hours, you have to stop. And so you would see situations.
Who could be the arbitrator in that? The government, right?
I mean, does the government belong in private industry, though?
Does the government belong, shouldn't the government be there to arbitrate between the industry and people?
But so then you have the situation where, okay, I live in California.
They have those things, they have an
I know.
NLRB,
I know they do. But like if I'm in California, just about every elected official is going to be liberal. If I'm in Texas, just about every elected official is going to be Republican. So if I'm in a
wish
union,
that wasn't so.
if I'm in a union and I'm in
They're all
California,
thinking the same, you think?
well, why would I start a business in California where there's a union where I know I'm never, as management, going to have anything seen my way? Conversely, why would I want to be in a union in Texas where, this is what happens when the government's involved. So it's almost like,
the federal government, this state government bullshit, it's gone too far. The states' rights, it's really divided us as a country.
I mean, it's the premise of our government, though, right? It
wasn't until they started to make states' rights a big frickin' deal.
Well, it's always been a big deal. From the very beginning.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, you had.
That's what created the disunited states. You mean the ununited?
No, I don't think that's it at all. I mean, when you started with the 13 colonies, Massachusetts and Virginia were incredibly different places.
Yeah.
And we had just left a giant power that was like, this is the way it's going to be for all things, where the states have different cultures, different ways of doing things. And so in the Constitution, like it is critical that states have,
But they were forming a government at that time,
but
right?
anything not enumerated in the Constitution,
less than 300 years ago? How many? Yeah.
Anything not
We're
enumerated
young.
in the Constitution falls to the states.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what allows, different people to live differently. Like if you live in California, you live a very different life than somebody in Texas.
But when you have the national,
Yep.
that means national, everybody, nation,
Yeah.
not separate states.
Sure.
The National Labor Review Board comes in. You have to have a referee. You have to have someone to listen to both sides and come up with a fucking decision.
Sure.
Rather than to create this constant, forever avarice between each side, and the hubris and the fucking, the vengeance toward each other.
Yeah.
This is why you need the NLRB. This is why you need arbitrators to come in and say, listen, fellas.
I'm not saying you don't need arbitrators. I'm just saying it is possible to do this the right way, as I saw with John Deere. And don't get me wrong, they've had their issues. But for the most part, what I've seen with unions is a hard line drawn. People are not working together. They're working almost against each other. I have to legally do this much. Once I hit this much, I stop. I have to legally do X. Once I do this, I stop.
Yeah,
and
people
so,
taking advantage of,
yeah. Yeah, so like excellence happens when people are working together. Very rarely does excellence come from, a constant adversarial environment.
Right.
That's the challenge, I think, when you're talking about labor unions.
Yeah. Well, people in the labor unions say, they're there because they've had the they've had the they've been there when the corporations pushed back, and they didn't want to see it happen again.
Yeah.
They were there. They were there outside picketing when they were getting beaten by clubs, by the goonies of the fucking corporations, right? So all that stuff.
There's a reason for all this stuff.
Yeah. And there's a reason for the vitriol that exists
back when
between.
Kids were getting their arms ripped off by machinery because we got, 8-year-olds. Yeah,
and it's happening now.
There's a reason.
I can't believe it, Nick. I got fucking 8-year-olds in packing industries in our country. It's insane.
Where did that happen? I didn't.
Wisconsin.
They've got 8-year-olds packing in
Wisconsin.
Yeah,
they got fucking 8-year-olds, 12. Say 12 to 13-year-olds. They got them on the fucking lines. They got them chopping off, working in the meat, the meat preparation.
Is this farm work?
No. This is.
Well, I'm gonna have to get educated on that because I have not
Wait
seen
a second.
that. You're looking it
Yeah,
up?
Wisconsin company illegally employed more than 100 children in hazardous work. This is from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
Dan, coming through.
Wisconsin Food Safety Sanitation Services provider has paid $1.5 million in penalties for illegally employing more than 100 children ages 13
So
to 17.
this is where I do have a problem, and whether you're talking about this or whether you're talking about the banking situation, or you're talking about the crypto guy that just blew up, made millions of people or thousands of people broke.
Right.
These people, when they do these things, they need to pay criminal penalties, not a fine.
Yeah.
Not 1.5. Like, hey, you were employing 100 children, you're going to jail.
That's right.
Period.
Working with hazardous chemicals and cleaning meat.
Yeah, you're going to jail, and you should. To me,
and there are a few other people in that category that should be going to jail.
Sure. To me, I understand a guy getting in a fist fight as a human reaction way more than I understand somebody plotting and planning to hire kids. So to me, the fact that this guy's getting locked up because he beat somebody up, and this guy is paying a $1.5 million fine. I want this guy in prison because to me, he's the threat. This is all right, you're doing what, we're fancy. I say this all the time. We're fancy monkeys. This is what apes do, ape mad, ape punch, this I understand. But, I'm going to, put a bunch of kids' lives in danger.
That's right.
That is a problem. So I think the piece that is always missing from these things, when you have these white collar crimes, these guys never really pay the price. They might lose some money or their company loses some money, but their lives are not destroyed the way they just destroyed other lives.
Right. Now, I hope that in the future we get to see a follow-up on this story. Because here's what happens in this country too many times. They tell us, oh my God, this has happened. Look at this. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. Then we hear nothing.
And our attention span is so
done.
So small.
That's right.
We know follow-up, know what happened,
Yep.
who pays the consequences.
Yep.
I mean, come on. What did we say? Is that news? Here's the news, all right? You deal with it. No. How about a fucking news program where we're going to follow up on these stories? My friend and I we'd been talking about this for a year. We wanted to do our own show called The Pulse. Almost got it to a point of getting it on a network. But the idea was to hear the people of America. And to do that, what we conceived was a wall full of monitors. Like, thousands of them.
As far as the eye can see.
Right.
Surrounded, yep.
And each one of the monitors is filled with one person from somewhere in the country. We're going to talk about a subject. We're going to, if somebody wants to say something,
they push a button.
Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. And we're going to have experts on that subject talk about that subject.
Interesting. We kind of have the
Now,
same
we're gonna
thing here.
have-
We have the same thing here, but it's Dan. It's just
Right.
Dan.
Yes.
Well, listen, this show is like the voice of America. I want to hear what everybody has to say about a particular issue and what problem they're having with it. How can we learn to become aware as a public, as a general public, aware of what the problems are and how do we solve them? And what is your problem? Are you just being selfish, or is this just for you, or is this for the country? And we were going to have two robots, Dim and Wit. And Dim and Wit were going to answer the questions from a collective source of material, reference material. Mm-hmm. And there was one way of looking at it, and then there was another way of looking at it. Then you had the experts. Then you had all the people that were going to chime in on the subject. Well, I found that to be a lot more interesting than listening to one person's take on a subject, or the same bullshit we hear from every fucking news organization every 6 o'clock. Let's talk about the same shit. It's bullshit.
But be more outraged than the day before.
Yeah.
Because
this is horrible.
Because it's about clicks. That's
But
how
we're
we
not
measure
going to follow
success.
up on it.
Yeah.
We're not going to find a solution. We're just going to say how fucking horrible it is.
Yeah.
And we're going to get really pissed off.
For one day.
For one day, and then the news comes on the next day. Oh, them bastards. Oh, those other fucking bastards.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think we're all have an opportunity with public media, social media, to solve some of these problems, to talk about, to put an arm around somebody who's feeling like it's the end of the world. It's not. We're here. We got you. Everything's okay.
That doesn't happen until the aliens come.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But anyway, so that was our idea. And we'd love to still do it. We pitched it to CNN, and they were, they weren't going anywhere.
No, it's an interesting premise.
It's a show for the people.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
About the people and by the people. It's, and if you want to help us get that off the ground.
For a small donation, 42 million.
No, but it's, I think, listen, you've got an open mic here. You got a lot of different people coming on your show. And I applaud you and your staff and your crew and everybody here that is trying to put something together for the people
I appreciate
of America.
Appreciate that.
And you've served the American people. You've served your country. There are people out there that wish they could have. There are people out there who are glad they didn't. But you did. And you can talk the talk about what it's like to be out there. And you still have the ability to say it's not right. That's America. You're fighting. You did your thing. And now you're looking to make a better America, not just through war or, what you did in Save Me and that film. I'm just proud to know you.
Well, I appreciate that. We just had a guest on, Matthew Boudreau, who's a lifetime educator, and he had a great comment about people are generally most happy when they are of service, and it's contrary to what. I don't know. I don't want to blame like society, but like there's this vision that people have, especially young people, that happiness comes from,
material things,
having the right car,
right,
and being in the club, and
right,
all of the things that we all. And I've been up and down several times in my life, and I'll tell you, for me personally, it really has nothing to do with what I own or what I have or how well my company is doing or not doing. It's just, am I being useful? Like, do I feel good about the work that I'm doing right now? Am I contributing to society? Have I helped somebody today, this week?
Well, you're a good American.
Well,
you're a great American.
I appreciate that.
So, our avenues of education and informing our minds and our bodies and our souls and our hearts are coming from so many disparate and different and anti this, anti that, horrible this, oh, don't you love this, constantly.
Yep.
Constantly. And it's really hard for people to go through life wanting something that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
When you pick something that you really have a passion for and you want to work on that,
yep,
you're on the right track.
Yeah.
But if you're putting down somebody else because you don't understand,
it's never good.
This is a problem.
It's never good.
I just,
All right.
Anyway.
Switching gears.
Yeah, baby.
Switching gears.
Women.
Bill, I don't think I could handle that take from you.
I'll tell you what right now. Me too.
Hollywood, right? You are, you mentioned earlier that you've had a couple of down years since the pandemic.
Oh boy. And that's with my daughter and her daughter living in our house with my son, who just moved out about 3 months ago. He's 36. And I know what I'm talking about. I speak from experience. But, my daughter's a single mother, and where else are they going to go? I mean, she had a really horrible situation, and there are a lot of people in this country that their daughters, get hooked up with the wrong guy, or their son gets hooked up with the wrong girl.
Yep.
So that's been a hell of a pandemic exacerbation.
Talk a little bit about, at this stage in your career, where you're not a spring chicken. You're more like a.
I'm 35 now.
But talk about how do you bounce back from the situation you were in, because you were, you've had an exceptional Hollywood career, and then you simultaneously had the pandemic where you weren't working, and someone stole money from you, and you were put in a dire situation. How do you mentally, because just so you understand, there are a lot of people listening to this program or watching this program that maybe have had suicidal ideation, that feel like
get help.
The world is, has been down.
Yeah.
We had a guest at the beginning of the show, Chris Cathers, who his buddy literally showed up at the door while he had a gun to his head, and that was the reason he didn't kill himself. And now he is, very much devoted to, solving the veteran suicide or any suicide epidemic. But I want you to talk a little bit about how do you rally from this dire situation, particularly at this stage of your life where you really shouldn't have to, especially considering the body of work that you've had.
Yeah, if I had my money, it wouldn't have been a problem. But talk about this, but well, first of all, I'm really lucky that I found what I love and what I'm wrapped up into completely as my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm lucky is that my industry, my union, provides me with a pension.
Mm.
Had I not had a pension, I'd be on the street. So
first
and
of
that
all,
comes with living in California,
Yep.
where, yeah, I have a house, and yeah, I got a lien on it. Yeah, it's a fucking mortgage. And this job that came along got me back on track, and I'm very thankful for that. But for 2 years, it was, thank God I got a good wife. And kids that didn't feel entitled.
Yeah.
We went from a really beautiful 6,000 square foot house that I thought I should sell because I was nervous about being able to, this is before the pandemic, about even, I thought I better get the money and run now.
Yeah.
Well, had I had any idea about how finances worked, never would have done that, because it messed up our whole life. But when we finally got into the house that we're in now, we overpaid for it because it was just that part of the real estate cycle.
So you could have had equity in the other house.
Oh, God.
You could have pulled equity out of the other
I could
one.
have. I should be a multimillionaire right
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
but I'm not.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
And we, thank God I have a pension from AFTRA, Actors Equity, and Screen Actors Guild. So that kept us going. My wife went back to work. She started getting jobs as an actress, and not big jobs, but she's starting her career over again and loving it. And we're okay now, but those 2 years during the pandemic were staying home a lot.
What was your mentality during that period of time?
Well, I tell you what, I was depressed, and the psychiatrist that I saw prescribed some antidepressant pills. We went from 30 milligram to 60 milligram to 90 milligram. And I felt better. I mean, it would help me cope. It helped me deal with my situation a little bit better. But I realized it wasn't making me any happier or wasn't solving anything. So I'd say just about 2 weeks ago, I took my last pill. I went and I did this all by myself. This psychiatrist, I read him the fucking riot act over the phone, hung up the phone, and I said, you got a lot of fucking, I was just all over his ass. And so I went from, 90 to 30 every other day to 30 every 2 days, 3 days, and then finally now, the last 4 days, I've taken nothing. Well, it really kind of, I feel now I'm sort of like
back to yourself.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And he tried to convince me that I've been depressed since my dad died, and it was it was clinical, or whatever they call it.
Man, that's a stretch.
Yeah, right. But I was ready to go for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was ready to believe that.
Yeah, it sounds like a movie, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I
he-
got really pissed off that I'm, here I was taking all these drugs,
Yep.
and I didn't really need to. And all I was doing was furthering this guy's fucking career as a psychiatrist. So that helped a lot. And now, getting this job, and how I got the job was I auditioned, put it on tape, a three or four page scene that wrote, and in like that, it's brilliant. And it was good. It was a good scene, but it had nothing to do with the movie.
Huh.
It was just something.
That's interesting.
I couldn't read the script. The script wasn't out, so I did it.
So
it
he just wrote it on the fly.
he wrote a scene on this fly about probably a headmaster in the school looking to get rid of this kid who was making trouble.
Huh.
So 2 days go by, and wants to have a Zoom call with me.
Yep.
So we're talking to Zoom, and basically, talking about kids, talking about, just our daughter. We both have a daughter, and,
Yeah.
just kind of getting to know one another. I said, well, what is this role? what do you want me to do? And so he told me about the role, and then I said, well, am I getting a script? Can I? He said, well, we're going to get you a script. He said, yeah, we'll get you a script. We're going to get you a script. So a lot of people didn't get a script. I only got up until my part, and I didn't get the ending. Nobody gets the ending.
Got it.
Until he shoots the
Until
ending.
he shoots it.
And so it was brilliant. I mean, the script is fucking brilliant in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's cinematically gorgeous, and the essence, the message is right on.
Emotionally, how do you go from probably one of the darker times in your career to you're about to be in a prominent role in a movie that you clearly love?
Yeah. That's business. It's like the song goes, you're up top one day, and then the next day you're down in the dumps.
Yep.
It's
Talk about what happened after you got off the Zoom call, Bill.
well, I did a little dance, and and I ran to my wife and I said, I got the fucking job! I got the fucking job! And I was pretty happy. So
I know I can't ask you about the role, but is it a departure from what you're used to, the role?
Yeah. It's still a character of authority.
I'd expect nothing less.
I don't know. It's funny. You asked me how I got all this. My dad, he would say, I'm sorry I retired. I should have stayed in for 20 years. I could have had a fucking pension now. And he was 45 years old. So, but it comes from my love and my pride of knowing what he had done,
Yep.
who he was with, how much he felt about Major Gavin, the guy who ran their operation, who's now general. He's passed, I think. But it was, it made me feel good, But I understood military characters. I understood what they wanted,
Yep.
why they wanted what they wanted.
Yep.
And in particular, it was pretty cut and dry. It's not as complex as, on screen. You don't get into the complexities of a general's life.
You don't. You just see the result.
I read everything there was to read about Maxwell Taylor. When I did 13 Days, Bobby Kennedy named his first son after Maxwell Taylor. Maxwell Taylor, when he retired, was called up by Rockefeller to oversee the building of Rockefeller Center. While he was doing that, Kennedy was president, and the Bay of Pigs happened. He called him up and he said, Max, we need you. Well, got to talk to Rocky about that. They asked Rockefeller to let him go. They let him go. Went back into the back in the uniform, and he sat around that table 13 days, Cuban Missile Crisis, and there were things that happened that a lot of people don't want to know about. That he was just, and that it's unfortunate, but I filled myself with the knowledge of the man.
Yep.
And then I tried to represent him in the best possible way I could. I thought he was a hero, and but you don't get to see the general's politic or his life or what he had with
you only get that moment.
You only get what the general is supposed to be doing in the film, which is being a general.
Yeah.
Like even if he was against going in,
Yep.
that's not the way they saw it. So anyway, there are very few. But when you're playing a character like Lenny, or you're playing a character like Sudden Pisanger, or a father, even, you're given the responsibility of recreating a life that is a lot more complex than just being a general on a film. So, because you're only expected to do one thing, and that is to be gravitas.
Yeah.
To be that guy, just like a stone, right?
Yep.
Well,
and actually, not a lot of generals. I shouldn't say that. A lot of generals are that way, but they're not always that way.
No.
There are some very soft-spoken, talented.
That's correct. I've met him.
Yep.
And I'm glad I have. And I've gone to many bases all over the country. I've been in NORAD, and I've been saw the space where they guide all our space equipment out there.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see what the military and the government is capable of,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it makes me even wonder even more why it's impossible for us to straighten this shit out.
Yeah, you make it. Yeah.
I mean, we can put men on the moon. We can find a fucking guy in a cave anywhere in the world if we want.
Yep.
We just have to have, it's a question of
But
priorities.
But we can't figure out
priorities.
We can't figure out healthcare. We can't figure
Right.
out infrastructure. Yeah, I get it. I'm sure you've heard the old joke about Marines who love to eat crayons. I'm sure some of you are tired of hearing that joke, and others of you are tired of telling that joke. I think it's high time we all moved past this silly prejudice that only serves to divide the armed forces and our veterans. It's time to be honest with ourselves. All of us. We all love eating crayons. The Army, the Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, and of course the Marines. Hell, I've even seen a Space Force cadet, or whatever they're called, put down their blaster and try the sweet taste of a red crayon. Just kidding. I've never met anyone from the Space Force. But we all love crayons, and that's a fact. And we've all known this since kindergarten when we first tried these delectable morsels for ourselves. We all need to stop hiding in the shadows, pretending to be afraid of the one thing that unites every single one of us. Follow me! Visit crayonsreadytoeat.com to get your delicious pack of chocolate crayons right now, making everyone a crayon eater one CRE at a time. That's crayonsreadytoeat.com. We'll do our quick questions, which are fun.
Rapid fire. I've got this nifty little.
Well,
hat.
give me the hat.
He's pulling.
He's pulling them?
No, Bill is.
Oh, okay.
You are.
Yeah, I pull them.
What's in there? Fucking mousetrap or something?
All right, so the first question.
Yeah.
The first question I always ask before the hat. Are you ready? These are meant to be answered as quickly as possible. I realize that might be a challenge.
No, there's an electric. There's an electric charge, Bill, attached to your seat. If you don't answer fast enough, I'm hitting the button.
All right.
First question. What is the toughest animal that you think you could defeat in hand-to-hand combat?
Cat.
All right. Cat. A man that knows his limitations. All right, here we go. Your life starts over at 18, but you can only keep one skill that you have. Everything else goes away. What is the skill?
I don't have any skills. Well, I wouldn't call it a skill, but I have a talent that I discovered that was drawn out of me by people that I love and cherish forever. I don't think I would have ever found that skill had I not been in the right place at the right time. I don't have any.
You're, of course, talking about gymnastic tumbling.
Yeah, right.
Do you think that you would want to keep the skill of brevity?
No.
Next question.
I don't know. That's hardly a one-answer question there.
If you had to swap lives with a character that you played, who would you choose?
General Maxwell Taylor.
Good answer. What scene from a non-horror movie scared you as a child?
Oh, Deliverance. That scared the shit out of me.
As it should. Do you have a secret talent that you're not willing to share?
There's my answer.
What's the strangest place you've ever fallen asleep?
I thought that was going to end a lot differently.
Penn Station.
I'd like to interject right here. Dan fell asleep in the North Carolina legislature with a full house standing up leaning against a wall.
Yeah, I was hoping he didn't see that. It was the worst part is I was operating a camera at the same time. So, hey, everything turned out in focus.
Is it true that Hollywood Hurd saved the town of Monroeville, Alabama?
Yes, it is true.
You talked
He could
about
have
this
been
before.
mayor.
Yeah, you talked about this before. So.
Hollywood Hurd will always be remembered in Monroeville.
If someone wrote a biography about you, what do you think the title should be?
He got lucky.
And who plays you?
In the biopic.
After I'm dead, some up-and-comer that has a full heart and wants to make a difference.
We're gonna end it right there, folks. This was an amazing series of hours with
Too long.
Bill Smitrovich. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for pushing me. Thanks for sharing all of your opinions and just generally being a very decent person.
Well, thank you.
Trying to make a difference. And I'm sorry about Dan, and the angry dude yelling at you from the
Well, I'm
corner.
sorry about my profanities. My profanities throughout this whole situation. I apologize to any people that are sensitive to that religious right, maybe. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. I just want everybody to have a good time and enjoy one another and to care and be aware of the people around them. They have problems too.
Folks, that's The Neutral Position. See you next week.